Hey, password dots. On today's Let's Stitch, we're visiting the land of giants. So put on your knit cap of unnerving and get ready to Foos Ro Da!
Oh boy, I sure am ready for adventure.
Man, real outside sucks. I didn't see any dragons. I didn't see any giant mud crabs. I didn't
Haggle with any talking drug cats.
I didn't bribe any guards. I didn't glitch anyone out of existence. I didn't even steal from giants. Wait a minute. That's it. Maybe, just maybe, with some dirty old socks, I can visit Winterhold in my mind. You know where it is?
Alright, to stitch our giant's going to take about 10 to 12 hours, and we're going to want to grab a pair of socks for the clothes, the fur, and the body. Going to get a pair of fabric scissors, some needle, a little bit of thread, a little bit of button. Going to get a pin cushion, which is optional, and a scrap pin. Alright, so lay your body sock out, lay it flat, and we're going to cut right down the ankle of that sock. So we're going with a basic sock monkey style here. It's a pretty simple build at its base. And I got a ribby sock, so I'm just making sure those ribs are even on both sides. Cutting a nice long length up those little leggy legs. And let's get back out. And just going to cut a round edge just right above the heel there. Now don't throw this top part away. We're going to save that for later. So once we've clipped that off, we're just going to set it aside. And I want you to grab your matching thread. It doesn't have to be exact, you know, it's just a brown or beige, whatever. And I'm not going to go over threading the needle with you. I'm going to assume you know that by this point. And let's move on. Flip your sock inside out so that when we stitch it up, this seam will be hidden on the inside. We're going to do that running stitch. I'm, again, not going to go over that with you in this video since it is more of an advanced build. But if you aren't up to speed, you can go and check out some of the other Let's Stitch videos in my playlist, where I'll go into that in a little bit of detail. If you look closely, you can almost see what I'm doing. Okay, so you stitched up your head. Congratulations. And now we're gonna move on to the legs. Just tying off my thread here real quick because we got a lot of extra, which is good. What I want you to do is you're gonna take your scissors here, and you're going to cut a little T at the top of them legs. Just clip. And clip. And that's going to, you know, give us like a nice little crotchular region. And so we want to start our running stitch here on the outside of each foot and then work up through the, you know, I guess you could just call it the inseam. And with a running stitch, you can just sort of dip your way through. You can pick up a lot of fabric at once, so you don't have to take it out every time. And that's neat. And I stitched each leg individually, meaning I didn't go the whole way around from one foot to the other because I wanted to leave a hole in the crotch, because that's where we're going to stuff them. See this? Right in that big old butthole, we're going to stuff that stuffing in there. But first we got to flip that guy inside out, because that's the right side of the stall, you dummy. Anyway, he's laid out flat now, and we're going to take some little bit of polyfiber fill, and he's stuffed. Just like a little, like, you know, I mean, I'm not going to tell you what I think it looks like. Instead, I'm going to, you know, help us stitch this butthole up. We're doing the ladder stitch. Run the thread from side A over to side B, and up like the leg of a ladder. Across like the rung, up like the leg, across like the rung. Before I close that hole up, I just want to throw in just a little bit more stuffing. You know, just want to make sure that he's looking right. You feel me, Holmes? Alright, and there he is. Just want to gently massage the gams a little bit, making sure that he's got lumps where he needs to be and no lumps where he don't need him to be. Shtabam! Shtabam! Now I've got and cut out some arms, about the same length as the legs. I've gone and stitched those up already, since you don't need to see another boring old running stitch. And now we're just gonna stuff them up. Just gotta throw a little bit of stuffing in there, and there you go, 2 perfectly little formed sausages. Now I want you to take the tip of them sausages and just tuck a little flap in there. It'll kind of do that by itself, but you just want to help yourself create a shoulder on top of there, so they're not like, aren't sticking straight out like an idiot. Anyway, stitch them up and boop, boop, boop. He's kind of cute. I don't know. Now we're gonna go ahead and stitch on them little monkey lips. We're gonna do, it's basically embroidering, and I hate it, but it looks pretty good when it's all said and done. So we're gonna go ahead and stitch right across the lips here. We're gonna do a back stitch. To do this stitch, simply run through the fabric, and instead of running forward with your thread, run backwards. And then you'll peek the needle back through just about a stitch length away from your first stitch. Then back again, close or touching that first stitch. Just think 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And you can make those stitches as long or short as you like. The important thing about doing this back stitch is that you just want to make sure that your stitches are really close together and equal lengths. Otherwise you're going to get really dopey looking dude, or dopier than any other regular snow giant. So there he is, got a nice little grumpy frown on him, and we're gonna go ahead and do what is one of my favorite parts. We're gonna stitch a little nose on this guy. Sock monkeys don't really have noses, but giants have noses, so mwah, we ain't got no room for haters. So we're gonna rock back and forth between 2 points here to pinch our nose into this face. And of course, like always, we want to just anchor off to the side here, so that way we, the thread's not gonna pull loose. And just tie that off. Here we go. So what I really like about working with socks as a doll medium is that you can, it's almost like sculpting. You get to manipulate that stretchy cotton in a way that you don't get with other stupid regular fabric that regular dumb dolls are made out of. And also you see here that we're making some eye sockets that are really going to help those doll eyes sink in, which is pretty cool. And here he is, his big dumb nose, and now we're going to pull out some big dumb buttons, and I've said dumb a lot, and please don't hate me. I have a couple of options for these eyes, and I just want to make sure I get the right sweet baby blues. Pretty sure I'm going with these ones. I like them a lot. They're big, they're crisp, they're textured, they have a nice cuteness to them, whatever. I don't gotta explain myself to you. Okay, so before I actually get started on those eyes, I'm just taking a slight detour. I want to sink this, I want to make a bigger chin area, just to sort of distinguish his head from his body, and that'll also help once we get to the beard later. I'm using the ladder stitch to do this up for those of you following at home, or if you're following on the bus or on the toilet or wherever. I'm not here to judge. And I'm just giving him a little once over here. I think he's looking pretty good. I mean, he looks stupid, but that's kind of the point, right? And let's go ahead and put the eyes in now. I got a blue thread to match the blue eyes. You want to just tack that in as we have been wont to do, and the thread bunches up as it wants to do, and I look like a stupid idiot. But it's okay, you can sort of work that back out, and if it gets really bad, you can cut those little mistakes, but that's just kind of the path of life. You can choose to live with your mistakes, or you can embrace them. Speaking of mistakes, look at this sweet baby here. He's definitely Like when you got a friend or a relative who had a kid and it's like not an attractive baby and they're like, oh, he's so cute, do you want to hold him? You're like, no, I'm good. But, he's my baby and I love him. And I'm tired and I was started this kind of late, so I'm going to go to bed and pick this up in the morning with a fresh pair of eyes. Today I'm going to cover a lot of ground. One of the things I want to get started on first is our giant clothes. And for our purposes there, I've got this white woolly sock. The outside's okay, but it's on the inside is where it really gets cool. So, just one of those winter socks, but it's got a really nice texture on the inside. It's just the wrong color, so we're going to fix that real easy. We are not going to use any store-bought RIT dyes or anything. We're just going to use some old coffee. Glug, 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 glug. There you go. Drain all that into a bowl. That's coffee. And that sock going in the coffee. And once we've got that fully saturated, we're going to let that soak for, about an hour. Now, while that project is brewing, I got another thing for us to do. In the meantime, we're going to make some hair. And we're going to use something a little bit different there. We're going to use an old shirt from my body. First thing I want to do is cut the finished edge off the bottom of the shirt, as well as the seams. I'm not going to use them for this project, but I might keep them around for something else later. Waste not, want not. That's what my mom always said. She never said that. I'm just cutting rough, jagged strips down here. It doesn't matter if they're straight or how long they are. I'd cut super long as opposed to cutting short, because you can always take away, but you can never add. Unless you're doing like math. If you're like doing addition, in that case you'll add. Once you have a good pile of hair going on, and you're gonna need to cut shirts for quite a while, just start lining it up along. I'm starting with the bottom and then working my way up to the top of the hairline. And we're going to be doing these one hair at a time until we reach the top of this seam. So get ready. If we check in on our coffee sock here, looks like that's coming along pretty well. So the hair is mostly on there. If you were going for a meatloaf sock doll, you're just about done, but we still have quite a ways to go. Obviously the hair is too long, so we're going to trim that down. And I put some eyebrows on the dude, and we're going to put some beard hair on, but first, let's see how that dye job came out, shall we? So now that the sock is dry, and maybe I wanted to leave it in the coffee a little bit longer, it is not as dark as I was going for, but it's darker than white, and it's got a little bit of that musky smell, so that's cool. It's just like the giants of yore. It'll be fine. It'll look good once it's on there. You'll see. Let's have some coffee. Same story on this beard. We're just starting from the bottom and gonna work our way right up to the top. Before we finish putting all the hair in, I want to complete the head by throwing in some large elf ears. So we're going to take the heel of the sock and just cut it loose, and then we're going to cut that in half. That'll give us some nice little points for our elf ears, because he a mer. I always wanted to play as a giant mer. I mean, I know that the light elves or the high elves or the gold elves or whatever they're called, they're tall, but they're not like giants. I want to be giant mer. I want to be fall mer. Anyway, this is just a straight stitch. I'm kind of playing this whole thing fast and loose because I hate stitching these tiny little pieces. It's like flipping them inside out and then right side out and then stuffing them and then stitching them on. It's just a pain, but it's worth it, you know? The gift of hearing. He deserves it. Whenever I'm working on big projects like this, I generally have something playing in the background. Today I have Trey the Explainer, who is a personality on YouTube who is a big science enthusiast. He likes looking at prehistoric history, the inaccuracies of prehistoric films. He looks at cryptozoological myths and breaks those down. He tells us what aliens probably won't look like. He actually has a video on the biology of giants, which I am watching right now. I mean, I'm not watching right now because this is a voiceover, but I was watching it at the time of making this doll. So if you're into sciencey stuff and you really want to know what happened back then, why don't you check him out? That is Trey the Explainer. Link is in the description. Handsome boy. Off camera, I went back and revisited his nose a little bit. It just wasn't as thin and pointy as I wanted. Looks a little Abraham Lincoln right now, but that will soon change. Let's go ahead and stitch these eyebrows on, why don't we? And I gotta be honest, I wasn't a huge fan of these eyebrows when I started. I don't know. They I did them as a ladder stitch, and they're okay. Just make sure that you give them that little sad, forlorn look, like, oh, I wish I could hang out with the other people of Skyrim, but they won't like me because I smell like cheese. Also, I eat their bones, but I can't help it. Yeah, see, I don't know. Like, the eyebrows are fine. They're fine. They worked out fine. I'm totally a professional. But now that that's done, and he's looking fresh, got a good cut, he's got his eyebrows did, I want to go ahead and give him some feet. I know sock monkeys don't really have feet, but he's got feet, because he walks around with them. Stomp, 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 stomp. Anyway, you're just going to ladder stitch these like you did with the chin, how we brought that together. Just back and forth in there. And we're going to define it a little bit more once we put the clothes on. You'll see. You'll see. And it is time to put on these furry pieces. So let's just go ahead and cut a cross section out of this. Got some little chunks there. And cut these in half. We got the arms and the legs going on. And you're going to get some frayed bits, so just make sure you get all that off there before you stitch it. Save you some trouble down the line. Starting with the arms, not for any particular reason, just because, you know, that's how I felt like rolling today, how I rolled out of bed. Anyway, you're going to ladder stitch those up along the sides, and you're going to ladder stitch all the way around. Get that secure. Just, you know, get all your ducks in a row. Get your taxes done. Just because apparently I can't stay on task, let's put that mustache on. I wasn't going to do the mustache, but we're going to do the mustache. He needs it. He needs it. He just does. So it's a little harder to hide the tacking of the thread with the mustache because we're not really covering it with anything. So just make sure you make those real small. It really does become seamless if you do it. The tack's small enough. And I'm going to just double layer it, give it a little bit more dimension. It did end up making him a little happier just with the curl of the mustache, but it's good. It definitely needed the mustache to complete the look. Speaking of which, it's time to get him clothed in his little giant tunic, caveman garb, tribal gear, whatever. Just slurp him on in there. Just suck it in. Just put it on, and then he's done. He's good. Whatever. He's done. Get him out. I only want the brown portion of this sock, so I'm going to take my scissors and whip, and I want to take the top off, and there we go. We're going to save this elastic piece and clip that and put it aside for now. I'm just working with this. I'm just cutting the general guesstimated shape of what this is going to be, and then I'm going to fit it onto the giant and sort of mess with it from there. But we're going up around the top and then down on the bottom for that loincloth. Loincloth. And so I've put it onto the giant, and I'm just trimming it from there. You know, you're like a tailor. It's like, you know, an old friend came into your shop and he's been out of work for a little while. You're going to do this favor for him, help him get back on his feet, land that first job interview so that he can start providing for his family again, you know? And for that, we're going to go over one final stitching technique. This is called a blanket stitch. It's going to give us a nice finishing edge. This is a visible stitch around the outside of your fabric. Start from behind, and from a bit below your edge, run up and over, loop once to fasten, and move to your next point. The key is to run through the loop you make each time you pass, so that the fabric is actually lined with your thread. I'm going with the lighter thread. I wasn't going to try and match the color of the fabric because I want the stitching to actually stand out from the fabric. You know, it gives it a really nice sort of handcrafted look. Not only because it's a doll, but because the giant would have made it himself. He doesn't have he can't go to a Walmart. You know, he can't pick that up in quintuple XL. He's got to make this himself, or the missus has to do it. You know, I never see her around, but she's probably just back in her little rock den, making shirts for giants. You know, probably all of Skyrim comes to this one lady, and she's overworked, and she's like, I need some time to myself. So she just sits in her little den, making these clothes. There's a little bit of extra woolly sock left over that I just tacked on there, and there you go. He's happy. He's moving and grooving, or just about to. But I want to add a couple extra accoutrements to our giant here. Obviously, what this giant needs is more buttons. So I got some buttons, and we're just gonna add them. Good. What I'm looking for out of this pile are some white buttons, or ivory, off-white, just a good number of big options here. And I got a big pile that I'm going to work from. I'm not going to use all of them, but I'm going to cut these buttons into the shape of bones with this Dremel. While not the typical household tool, it is very useful in this case, so we can zoop, 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 zoop. Yeah, just trim these buttons on down to bone size. Know what I'm saying? And because this is going to create a lot of dust and debris, I've got just a cardboard box and some black garbage bags. We're going to work over top of this, so we're contained. And also I've got this cork on a barbecue skewer. It's got a little notch in it so we can put the buttons inside. That'll keep our fingers safe. Also, when working with a Dremel or other power tools, remember to wear eye protection. I'm using a sanding disc on the Dremel to just cut some pretty rough notches into each of the buttons before we get into the nitty gritty. Speaking of grit, I don't actually know what grit this sanding disc is. It's pretty old. If you can see, every once in a while you'll notice there's a big chip out of it. But it still gets the job done. You know, we're just cutting buttons here. That's all. And if you don't have a Dremel or don't feel comfortable cutting these buttons, you can buy bone buttons online. Just Google them. You know, I can get those on Etsy. You can get them on Amazon. and I replaced the sanding disc with a sanding bit that is, all the way around, so we can start putting the finishing edge onto each of these. And with those bone pieces done, we're moving on to what was probably the most frustrating part of the process, which was the troll skull. The old skull of troll that the giants usually have on their waist there, sort of like a big trucker's belt buckle. I didn't want the buttonholes to show through, so I picked a really weird button that, the buttonhole is underneath. And it just kept, whoop, there it goes. Just fell out of my button holder a lot because it's a rounded, sort of rough cut shape on the top. And it just took a really long time to get going there. But as you can see, I was able to get a really nice row of teeth going on at the bottom of the skull. Oop. 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 Okay, now that we've taken care of that business, we're gonna put 3 skull eyes into this troll skull face. I got just a pointy drill bit on my Dremel. It ended up putting these sort of burn marks into the skull, which was kind of cool because it gave a nice dark set color to the eyes, which set them apart. And I'm just running across the top of the skull here to get some ridges and cracky looking things. And let's go ahead and assemble all of our pieces. We're going to go along the fur belt there, stick the troll skull right in the middle. And I cut some rib pieces off of some of the button scrap that was left over from the long bones, and I'm going to put those on top. So I talked about being able to find those bone buttons online, which isn't too hard, but getting a hold of that troll skull is a bit of a different story. You're not exactly going to pick those up on trollskullemporium.com. So I just went and made it. If you aren't incredibly crafty, or again you don't really feel like working with power tools, you can get a regular skull button online. That's no big deal, right? They'll get it. The giant understands. I found this little Celtic knot type button that put on the arm, and a couple little doodads that are going to go on there besides the bones themselves. And the ribs, I'm just wrapping the thread around real tight. They don't have buttonholes, and I wasn't going to put any in. And I think this looks a little bit better than buttonholes. And just some stitch lines to make it look like it's all sort of patchwork together on the tunic. And there's our finished piece. Look at him. Majestic. Wandering free among the wilderness. Master of his own domain. Beautiful, elegant, proud, strong, piercing gaze. Thoughtful in his own gianty.
Something that's weird. It's part of a weird kind of mindset, and it doesn't.
Well, we did it. It's finally done. It was great spending time with you, good buddy. Hey, how about I grab some of that little old cheese?